Okay, welcome to our May meeting of the Indiana Data Users Group. Thank you for being here on this gray day. We've had some really beautiful weather, actually, the last few days in May. And today is just one of those kind of cozy, like stay inside and have a little cup of tea um, and stay at your desk kind of days. So we're going to get started with today's topic, which is discovering data about aging populations. Now, there's data about aging populations across the world, global data, um, in a lot of places right now, especially because of the shift in our baby boomer demographic um, and the way that this huge population segment is aging. So you can find a lot of data and a lot of opinions about the data and opinions about the population's shift. But what we are doing today is basically giving ourselves the direct access to the core raw data on age groups from the Census Bureau. Um, there are other authoritative sources. For example, the Population Reference Bureau is a really good one. Um, but of course, our main focus is try to get you the most reliable authoritative data, which is for the United States, which is from the Census Bureau. So let's first think about, of course, my slides are being wonky and not advancing, but okay, so um, I guess before we dive into our topic right away, we want to check in with everybody about any current projects that we're working on, any challenges that have come up since your last meeting with the Indiana Data Users Group. And we'll go around the room and I'll start with this one just because the topic that I am working on, I probably have mentioned several times in the previous meetings, but it's the library districts and the changes that they go through over the decade and the years within the decade. And we are getting going on this new project with the state GIO and with our state library MIS. We're really excited about this project. It's not formally starting until next year, 2025, but we're in the planning stages of getting the people together to work on a team on this project. So we have Caitlin and Steve from GIO, and then we have Jeremy and Adam from the ISL MIS team. And we're going to all meet again this summer to discuss our uh, basically the feasibility of creating a system that helps directors submit their changes to any library boundaries, which affects their population served data, which is part of the component of that I work on. So we are excited about it. And again, it's in the planning stages. So we're just kind of throwing around ideas and finding out if this is going to work. So I'm going to go to you, Kara, and see if you have any data challenges that have come up in the past few months.
Well, it's not actually a data challenge yet, I don't think, but it was interesting because George started a conversation in chat today about our non-resident fees for public libraries, how they figure that. So they figured the amount that they can charge for people trying to use their library out of the district. And of course, you have to have a regular library card at a library before you can get a plaque. So anyway, this just came up this morning. And so we located the public library statistics page and we went to the non-resident fee. And Paula organized it, high to low. I think probably the most surprising thing was that a very teeny tiny library, Converse, actually charges over $300 for a non-resident card. So that
Oh,
was a little
wow.
shocking to me.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. I was kind of going down through the list trying to see it. I hadn't actually, I was on the website. She actually downloaded it and, manipulated the data so that we could see the high to low. But so yeah, we were, I think the conversation's over. I think we stopped talking about it, but it was just interesting to me. And also, you see there's a list with all the non-resident fees, and then there's a tab that summarizes the data. And so that was the thing that probably, it gives a more accurate picture of non-resident fees than those way out there charges. I don't know. I was just surprised. So that just came up today. So we were having fun playing with the data and trying to figure out how they decide to do that. And we know that it says you have to have a $25 fee or it's like according to your capital. Well, I'm not using the right terminology, but your budget, you have an operating budget. And so you have to, I don't know. See, that's what I mean. I'm just still learning. And so we were trying to figure out, how they get that. And I guess the other thing that I was really surprised about is there's a minimum that you can charge, but there's no cap on like how much you can charge. It has to
Okay.
be at least $25, but there's no
Okay.
cap on that. So anyway, yeah, that's my thing. Most recent.
Yeah, that's a great, like, completely applicable to a
Yeah.
library, thing to share. And the fact that somehow that library's formula is that someone pays that much
Yeah.
money. But also, there must be something about that formula that really calculates the value of that library,
Yeah.
like per patron for
Right.
that community. And that's kind of interesting how you would even come up with that $300 number. Like I think in my imaginative mind, I'm like, that there's like no end to the value of of a
Right.
library card,
That's
the way that
true.
I think of
Yes.
it. But
Yes.
even as a patron to actually think about paying
Right.
that seems like a quite a
Yeah.
high chunk of money to pay it. But I would
Yeah.
be really curious as to how they come up with their formula.
Yeah. And the summary, you would probably understand it much more than me because I don't really work with statistics a lot. But so when you looked at that summary, you would probably be able to tell it's actually by population. And then, when you look at that and see the median, it's more like 65 to 75 is the average. So
Okay.
yeah. So there's ones that are way out there and not really
Right.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I'll quit talking.
Thank you so much, Kara.
Okay.
Okay, Lisa, do you have anything to add about the multitude of data that you come across
I do not.
and
Sorry.
any projects that you're working on that
I don't have any new projects. All of mine are the same, and they're all just the monthly reports.
Okay. Well, we'll dive into the census data on aging populations. So, in the first place, where does this data live? I'm going to show you a little bit about where at the Census Bureau and in which surveys this data can be pulled from. But of course, there is a lot of data out there. from a multitude of sources, federal and state. Federal, and we won't go into this today, but of course there's a lot of health data with the coming baby boomer segment of the population available, and a lot of projections that are available. But also keep in mind that people have been kind of keeping an eye on this for quite a while now, and there have been quite a few projections made. But projections are just that. They are estimates, and they are not actual collected raw data on something. So when you're looking at a projection about the baby boomer population and what numerically the dollars that are going to be spent, keep in mind that we really won't know that actual value of the dollars that will be spent until it happens. And some of that is happening now as the older segment gets to that threshold where they're really making waves in economic reports. We'll start to see some of the results of the baby boomer generation aging quite soon. So how do we access this data? The census data is quite easy to access on data.census.gov. So we'll do a demo in a little bit, and I'll show you how to get to that raw data. Otherwise, there are multiple ways to access data online. I do a presentation called Data in Action, where I talk about lots of different health data that is available. And some of that is available for free online. And some of the data that you find will be behind either a paywall, or it'll be in an institution where you have to apply for access to the data. And even if that is free access, you sometimes have user agreements you have to sign with the institution. For the most part, though, most of the public data is available online. How can we use this data on aging populations in the services we provide? So as librarians, how can we apply this data on aging populations in our libraries? And how do we use this data to support this part of the population in our library services? So just a few questions to think about while we're looking at this data. Of course, the main question that I thought each of us could ask is that in my role, what characteristics do I know about people aging in Indiana? And what else do I need to know in order to have some insight into either my job or my life in general? A lot of us are caring for aging relatives. And so it helps to know some of the data that is out there. And many of us have loved ones who are aging who we can either help with knowing more about the data or it helps us to know. So here's a little screenshot of a data visualization from the Census Bureau. These are from the projections from the Census Bureau from last decade, from 2014. So that means this year, 2024, they're going to come up with another set of these. And we will very soon have another graphic, I'm sure, much like this, that will be a bit more updated. But back in 2015, they were projecting out 40 years. And you can see how the shift starts to happen right from that 2020 to 2030 pretty distinctly. That line from 2015 to 2030 is quite sharp, from around 50 million to around 75 million of US residents that are 65 years and older. And then it levels off just a slight bit in 2030, but it's still increasing. And I'm looking at that total line at the top. And then it starts increasing even more in 2050. So you can see that population shift of the baby boomers from 2015 to 2030 as they start to become 65 years and older. So again, look out for the new population projections this year that will come out that'll give us even more updated information on this. So I'm going to switch over to our data.census.gov, and I'll send out these slides a little bit later. This is basically telling you the steps that I'm going to go through in the demo, and we'll switch over to that right now. Okay, can you see the data.census.gov?
Yes.
Oh, my speaker was off. Can you see it?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so all I did was I typed data.census.gov into the URL up above. And this is the interface as it looks today. So it has this kind of Google type search box up here, which you're welcome to type in keywords or specific tables if you're interested in specific tables that you know that you've used before. You can scroll down a little bit and see a little bit of guidance in exploring tables, building maps, and a little bit more about certain areas. But what I like to do is I always go to advanced search, which is right here under the search box. So go to that advanced search and click once. And advanced search lets you have your filters all listed on the left-hand side. They're by topic, geography, and specific survey and year. So when you first open this up, it's going to have all of those filters spread out for you. And if you noticed, I just zipped up some of those filters so that we have kind of a fresh slate. The first thing we're going to look at is just statewide. So we've got to choose our geography. Our geography is state, so I click on state, scroll down, click Indiana. That has populated the filter box up here. So it says one filter. My one filter is the geography, Indiana. I'm going to zip up that geography and go to topics. Now this is important because If you click on the topics next, then it's going to give you the multitude of surveys that are available for your topic. And that's what we want. We want to see any survey that has data on the aging population in Indiana. So I'll give you a tip here under topics. The place we're going to go into is populations and people. And you can see here the older population. That's what we're going to choose. And if we wanted year by year ages, we could also choose the age and sex. So that's something you may also want in the future for aging populations. If you want to look at only certain age by age, like year by year, you can go to age and sex for very detailed year. But for right now, we're just going to do the more general older population. So that has filled the filter up here. And I'm going to zip up that topic. And we're going to choose the most recent year that there is data for. And so I'm going to stick with 2020 because that's going to pull all of the different surveys that there are available that there's data for. So now we have our 3 filters. And the next step you need to remember is this little search button. So we've got Indiana, older population, and 2020 data. And we're going to hit that search button. So that search button is basically your magic button. And after you hit that, it's going to show you all of the different things that there are available on data.census.gov. Across the top here, you can switch from tables, and this is a list of tables, to a list of maps, to a list of population profiles. And then they even have a Census Bureau webpage search that they do automatically for your filters. So we can even switch to that if we'd like. But for now, we can kind of scroll down the list of different tables there are available. Some of these first tables are, you'll see the survey right across the top of the table. And this is the American Community Survey, which is the annual survey that the Census Bureau does for a sampling of the US population. So it looks like there's some ACS demographic and housing estimates. There is a table about population 60 years and over in the United States, and a table for population 65 years and over. They have included the pure age and sex table, which is basically just what it says it is. It's single years of age and or age groups, and divided by sex. And if we scroll down a little bit further, it looks like most of these are American Community Survey results. And if we want to know about any of the other tables that are available, we can click that View All Tables. Let's scroll down a little bit further and look at some of the maps that might be available. I'm going to go ahead and click this ACS Population 65 Years and Over map and see what it looks like. So this shows us that in 2020, by percent in Indiana, about 49% of the population was 65 years and older, which I think is a pretty significant part of the population.
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, me too. I didn't expect it to be so high.
Yeah.
So you can, with this map, you can change some things about it. But for the most part, it's basically going to tell us that one data point, which is actually quite important to know. You know, let's see. It says, and it's a good thing to kind of dive in here and see what it says. Now, I'm not sure we're really getting at the data point that it might look like it is, because male is selected. So let's see. Because it would make sense that 49% is male of the population and 49%, 51% is female. So I think that's actually what we're seeing. We're not seeing that 65 years and older population part yet.
That makes much more sense.
We're only seeing it by sex and age. So it may mean that we need to choose if you see that I'm clicking this little edit button, that's the way that I get to edit, I guess, the title of a map that I'm going to print. But that's not what we want. We really want to get going on editing what we're seeing. So I'm going to go to the number and 65 years and over estimate. Total population. And this is a little bit clearer. It says in 2020, there were 1,050,826 people 65 years and over. But let's see if we can get that to change it to a percent. So I'm going to go up here to this little drop down and change it to percent. See, it's pretty high still. It's not quite 50, but it's still 44%. So look, it switched to that to the male again. So that is strange. So when I choose the number, it's letting me have the total population of male and female. But when I switch to that percent, it's giving me only one sex. I'm going to stick with the number, and we're going to keep that number. 1,050,826. We're going to compare that with an ACS demographic and housing estimate for Indiana and look at the total population. $6,696,893. I'm going to take out my calculator and do a little math. And it looks like the population over 65% is closer to 20% of the population in Indiana, which makes more sense. And that percentage that we were seeing before was truly just the percentage of males total population versus the percentage of female total population. And this is all to say, this is what it takes to really get at some of that raw data. You need to be aware of what you're seeing in the interface and what kind of interface you're looking at. I'm going to go back to the pure tables and look at the table for the population 65 years and over in the United States. When you double click that title of the table, it automatically pops up. I'm going to reduce this column by clicking that arrow so we can see the table better. And you'll see we've got sex and age. I'm going to minimize these. Until we get to what we're looking for. And even though I've looked through every topic in this table, it doesn't look like there is a specific focus on the population 65 years and older, even though that is what I chose. So I'm going to go back out to my results and choose another table. Okay, so this is the specific table, and we just needed to scroll over. So it's showing the same numbers that it did in the map, which is a good sign. That total population for Indiana, and then scrolling over, we can see the 65 years and over is 1,050,826. You can see males versus females. The females in Indiana represent a larger part of our 65 years and older population, which may mean for us as library professionals that we need to gear our programs more toward 65 years and older females. All of these topics in this table include the Indiana total in the first two columns, and then the 65 years and older over result in the next two columns. So we've got the householder or spouse, the parent, other relatives. Under relationship, we've got households by type, whether they're in a married couple, and then marital status. We can see there's a portion of this population in Indiana that's not, that is now married and then that is widowed or divorced, and the percentages. Educational attainment for this part of the population in Indiana. Whether this part of the population in Indiana is responsible for grandchildren under 18, which is definitely important for planning library programs. We can see veteran status for any of our veterans that may need assistance through library programs. Disability status. Looks like over a third of our 65 years and older are disabled. Place of birth and citizenship status, language spoken at home, employment status, income in the past 12 months, poverty status. This is pretty much the most detailed table about the 65 years and over population that you're going to get, because it's from the American Community Survey.
What's the American Community Survey?
The ACS is the annual survey that the Census Bureau does for a sampling of the population. So, Lisa, I know you're familiar with the census.
Yes.
Well, the census, as you know, used to have a long form that they sent out only to a sample of the population. So would be like most of the population would get that short form, and then every, sixth person or something, they would get the special long form, which would be lots of other questions about the household. And then the 90s, it was recognized that this kind of data was even more important to planning, that people wanted that kind of really interesting data about income and educational attainment and veteran status, disability status, that was asked of a sampling of the population. So they started asking what was on the long form every year. And that became the American Community Survey. The first data came out in the early 2000s, and they've been doing 1, 3, and 5 year estimates. And again, this is an estimate, whereas the census itself every 10 years is a raw number, a count of the population. The ACS produces estimates. They started off doing 1, 3, and 5 year estimates, and now they're only doing 1 year and 5 year estimates. But it's a really great opportunity to harness that rich social and economic characteristic data every year, instead of waiting another 10 years to get good data. Because for a while, for several decades, it was that we'd get this good data from the census, but then in, 5 or so years, that data really would be quite outdated. And you wouldn't want to need data from coming from the 1990 census, and it's 1999, and you're still using data that's 9 years old. So for the past 20 years, we've been able to have updated year by year data about the US population through the ACS. And there are actually lots and lots of user guides online about the ACS. There's a series of guides called the Compass Guides, and that was, I think, last decade's name for them. Now they've just been consolidated into General American Community Survey user guides. But we have several of them in the library, and there's a bunch online through the Census Bureau. So Here are the handbooks for data users. So there are very specific handbooks. This is a general one, but they go into very specific ones, like what federal agencies needs to know, what users of data for rural areas need to know, what business community needs to know, what state and local government users need to know. So these handbooks have been out for more than a decade. And we have both the print and online versions here at the library. So it tells you all about the estimates and how they are different from the census. And what I like the most is as I entered census data as a novice user, the appendices, of course, as a librarian, I geek out on things like this, but there's a glossary. It tells you all about the different census terms and the different census estimate terms. And then also there are other things that are specific to releasing data, like margin of error and things like that that are described in some of these appendices. This is a really good one, the differences between the ACS and the decennial census. So if you're ever curious about the ACS and the data that we basically can pull from now every year, that social and economic data that is additional to the census data that's just a count of the population, then you can go to these user guides.
Wow, Katie, you are a wealth of information. That was so interesting.
Well, you know,
And
I
on
mean,
the fly, no less. That's like you had studied weeks to prepare that.
I have. Look, Lisa, I met you when we first started. You've been here longer than me. I've been here 17 years now. This is like from day one, we learned about the census. Every division of the library deals with the census. And then,
Very interesting.
yeah,
Although I
having
did see
the,
a scary little math problem. It looked like a calculation when you were
I
scrolling through. I was like,
know.
what was that?
I know.
yeah,
That was a little
and
scary.
yeah, and that's the thing about this. Like, this is all meant to be guides for us, those of us who really just want to apply the numbers, right? We're not looking for those formulas. We're not statisticians, but we very much benefit from the statisticians who are
Yes.
working at the Census
Yeah.
Bureau
Thank you.
and write these things. So these are guides that I have skimmed and scanned and read, and for whatever reason, I have had, all of these different reference questions that deal with using the ACS or using the census. And these are great resources for all of us, especially those of us who are basically the ones that are helping somebody that does have less knowledge than we do. So yeah, these are really, really great guides. I'm going to stop the demo here. I know we only really went over one map and one table, but it gives you a sense of how you get to that raw data, straight to that data. And if you ever need help with the data.census.gov interface, don't be shy. You can call or email me because, as you can see just from my demo, it's not all completely intuitive. So you kind of have to click around and just play around a little bit with it to get to what you're really wanting. That first map that we went to, it really didn't even automatically populate what we wanted to see. So it's often safer just to go to the table like we did here first and see that raw data in tabular form. So let's go ahead and close out of that. And we'll go back to the slides. Let's see if I can get back there. and properly share it for everybody. Okay, you're gonna have to let me see whether this actually works for you.
Yes, I can see the slides.
Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Oh, I can't hear anybody. Can you see it yet?
Yes.
Great, okay. So let's go back to the slide that we were working with. So I've put together a list of helpful resources from the Census Bureau's website on the aging populations that we're looking at right now. And this first one is exploring age groups in the 2020 census. So our most recent census, you can look at this interactive visualization and change around some of the age groups. And I'm not going to demo that for you right now, but I encourage you to go to these visualizations and see what you can find out. The next one is
Katie, we can't, we're on the first slide.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
So it's not popping out for you. It's just showing.
No, we're showing like
You're
the
seeing
main
the
screen where we
actual
could see,
PowerPoint.
well, we could see the slides to the left as well.
Okay.
So we could see each individual slide. Did you start it from the beginning? There.
I am going to actually, I think it's the way that I chose to share it. Let me try it one more time. Okay, can you see
Yeah, we can see those.
the helpful resources slide?
Yes. We can see that.
Oh, can you see it?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Now we see your desktop where there it is. We got it.
Okay. I had to switch every time I do that, the sound goes off. So, okay. So, yes, as I was saying, this first one is definitely worth going to. Go to the visualization, interact with it. The second one is how has our nation's population changed? It's a news story about Senior Citizens Day a few years ago, but it's very applicable today. The next one is older population and aging census topics. So it's basically just a census portal to all of the different things that there are on the older populations and aging. And then there's an additional component to that is the visualizations for older populations and aging. So I encourage you to go back to the Census Bureau's website and visit all of these links. We're going to go back to our session slide. And
Hey, Katie,
yeah.
what programmer is the census using to do those maps? Is it Tableau or is it the other one that you had listed? What do they use?
They have their own developers.
Okay.
So they in data.census.gov, they have completely created their own interface.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not certain that they use Tableau for those maps.
Okay.
We'd have to ask someone at the Census Bureau if they have that embedded somehow. But I think
Yeah.
it's really just the Census Bureau's
Okay. Okay.
own interface that they use.
Okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes as state data centers, we can actually suggest different things to them about their interface. And we can be that sounding board for them. Like for example, I can go to them and say, I tried to use your map, and we were inside of a presentation even when I was doing it, and the map did not actually show what we were looking to show, and I think it would be advisable to do some more training. Put out one of your data gem videos on maps. In fact, they most likely do have one of those. The Census Bureau has a Census Academy, where you can go and view lots and lots of different training videos on using data.census.gov for different reasons. So they do already have a Census Academy on using maps, maybe not specifically for using maps for finding data about aging populations, but at least there will be a Census Academy video on going into those maps and navigating all of those different little toggles and different tools that are in there. So that's another thing that will be listed in this new data tools and resources on the right under Census Bureau data tools and apps. I have a link to the data tools that the Census Bureau provides. One of those, let's see. I know I'll probably have to switch right now. I'm just going to tell you what's in there. So these are different data tools and apps that the Census Bureau produces. So this is all across the board for 2020 census, but also for lots of different parts of the Census Bureau. So the American Community Survey data tools are represented here too. Also the Business Dynamics Statistics Explorer and the Census Business Builder, which is a tool that I swear by because it's a really, really interesting tool to learn about businesses in your area, business growth in nearly real-time data. So I would encourage you to go to this list and pick out some data tools and take some Census Academy classes to learn about using them and sharing them with patrons and your colleagues. So the other notes that I have before we end our session is with Power BI. I'm suggesting everybody to do what I'm doing, make a date with yourself to take a LinkedIn course on Power BI so that you can explore Power BI at your leisure and figure out a little bit on your own by using a self-paced course how to use Power BI. If you have not asked Lisa yet to have Power BI put onto your desktop computer, you can request that. And moving backwards in time, if you are still using Tableau and you would like to use the servers to practice, please email me your data and I can post it to the server for you so you can practice using Tableau. I'm still tooling around with Tableau. I have some data that I'm working with from the data center and also from the Young Reader Center that I'd like to get into Tableau to use. And with Power BI, I'm learning as I go. So one of these sessions will be a Power BI session pretty soon, so that we can kind of get a start on those of us who are new to Power BI. And with that, it looks like past 10 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and end the session. Our next session will be Tuesday, June 4th, and we'll do it the same way that we did it today in room 425 live, and we'll do it virtually. Again, all of our sessions are being recorded, so you can tune in on your own and listen to these little educational sound bites. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Katie.